They just have no idea like what even like the business metrics up top even are. Putting stuff in this format, it really just like helps you tell a better story. Like if you can go through and do this exercise for your own company, it can be a great thing for your career.
We got Steve here. We're going to do a bit of a live demo, which I'm pretty pumped about. I am particularly important to talk about this topic because I think it is one of the most important topics as well inside product. How do we break outcomes down? How do we link work to outcomes ultimately? It's also the thing that I see product teams struggle with all the time. They're trying to break things down, they're trying to make sense of it. And if we don't start in a really good spot, like we don't start with a good outcome, then everything else downstream from that is kind of you're starting in a bad spot, right?
Yeah, a quick intro on me. So I'm Steve Klein. I'm one of the co-founders of Vistaly. So Vistaly is a tool that product teams use to run their whole continuous discovery practice, really tie a lot of the work that they're doing back to the change in user behavior that they want to see, and ultimately the business impact that they're trying to create. And if the tool you're using isn't really built with that idea in mind, you're going to end up kind of cobbling together a bunch of different tools to try and do it. So something that really is like built from that viewpoint first really helps, with this kind of change in the way that you think. So I have a background in product and design. I've co-founded a few startups in the past. Most notably is a company called statuspage.io. We did Y Combinator way back in the day, way back in 2013, which is like wild to think how fast time goes, right? It feels like it's yesterday, and holy crap, it's 12 years ago. But yeah, got acquired by Atlassian, so got to move out to San Francisco as part of that and work at kind of a big public company. So it's cool. So yeah, that's me.
It's got to make you somewhat of an honorary Aussie working at Atlassian too and being acquired by them. So
yeah, in some ways, yeah. Obviously, ton of Aussies working at Atlassian. I totally blew it. I had the opportunity to go to Sydney a couple times, and just like scheduling, timing didn't work out, and we just had a baby around the time we moved out there. So big missed opportunity, but yeah, would love to get out there someday.
Well, let's get into it. Let's you want to pull it up. We'll go through breaking this down.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to kind of illustrate this idea is I'm actually going to share our own Vistaly workspace and kind of talk through how we think about breaking down like these like bigger lagging business outcomes that product teams sometimes get tasked with down into more like actionable, something a product team can actually influence and like wrap their head around. Yeah. Okay. So this is Vistaly, and this is actually like our own workspace. I've hidden some of the like actual values of the metrics here for now, but I'll show some of the like actual data that we're tracking about how users are using our product soon. But yeah, like at its core, Vistaly is, you can think about it in some ways as like this mind mapping tool, not too dissimilar from like how teams today use like FigJam or Miro to create like opportunity solution trees or even do some of this work. But it's structured, it's like more structured in the way that product teams would want to run this process. So it's a little bit of the best of the both worlds, right? It's like the flexibility of being able to like just move around cards and get your thoughts out, but also is like backed with a database in like a way that like product teams would want it to be. Okay, so we often talk about this idea how like product teams will get tasked with these kind of like big overarching business goals, right? The CEO might come to you and say, hey, churn's been really bad lately. I want you to go out and fix churn. And that's like a terrible thing to just like throw at a product team, I think, because it's so open-ended. There's no like good guardrails for what kinds of things that you might work on to improve that. And also, I think, there's a thing around like everyone has like all of their own assumptions around what are even the levers that we might be able to pull to improve retention.
The big one for me as well is like when you get given a very broad outcome, it's a problem in multiple ways, right? The first way is that it's super broad, which is kind of what you were saying. Like there's so many levers. Like you take, what was your example, like churn, right? But even like we got revenue here, right? We see that a lot. Every company's strategy on the page, one of their pillars has got to be growing revenue or something, right? And it's like there's a million ways that we can make money. And on top of that, it's also the second thing that I think is a really challenge for product teams, and run into it a lot when I'm coaching teams, is that it's also something that they're like, whoa, I'm so far, often, not all the time, but like I'm so far away from that. Like, can I even, like, I can kind of contribute to it, but I don't feel like I can control revenue. Like I don't control what marketing does and the sales team does if you're like B2B sales led, or I don't like, there's like, we have 5 product lines. I own one of them. What about if they lost money? Like, and it almost feels unfair too. Like you're asking me to do something that I don't really feel
Yes.
like I have control over, or I own, or I can influence. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like something as like big and overarching as like the company's annual recurring revenue, it's such like a multi-factor equation, and realistically, you only can control like a small portion of that yourself. Um, and so I think the strategy is always, let's take these, it's basically this, let's take these big goals and figure out what are the biggest things that contribute to that. And you can kind of like do that recursively until you get to a level that's like, this is good scope for a single product team to focus on this sliver of it. And as you kind of like scale that out, right? Like I might be focused on this part, right? Marketing's doing this. Some of the other product teams are contributing to other things that ultimately ladder up to growth. But you have to like continue to break these big multi-factor problems down into small enough contributing parts that like one team can take that and say, cool, we're going to focus on how can we improve this part of it, over the next quarter or a couple quarters or however long.
Sorry to jump in.
Yeah.
2 things have gone through our mind on this one. One of them is for the product leaders out there. This is important because I see this as a crucial part of your role too, with like, what problems are we solving? What outcomes am I defining and giving to teams? But equally, you don't always, so for the product managers listening to this, you're not always going to be in an environment where like someone's broken down that big thing and made it really specific and specific to your area. And we're going to kind of go through it and give you like real examples of this in a minute. So then you also need to learn to do that, because rather than, sheepishly being like, all right, I guess I'll try and do something about retention, you can then break it down, and we're going to walk you through it. And this is why it becomes a really, really crucial skill and such an important skill. And then you can communicate back to everybody else and say, here is how I think I can contribute to retention, right? And this is the outcome that I'm going to then focus on as a result of that. And that changes the game for you. It changes the conversation. It changes a lot. Sorry.
Totally. Oh, no, totally. I think that's a great point. I think being able to like break these huge problems down into their like constituent parts is a way to be seen as a like strategic, thoughtful person and communicator, right? I think most teams, certainly down at like the individual contributor product manager level, but even it's shocking how often like I'll go in and like, someone will sign up for a Vistaly trial and we'll kind of run this exercise with them. And they just have like no idea about like what are the things that ultimately ladder up to the company's, overall like revenue numbers. Like what are the things that are important to them? And so by like creating this clarity for the team, like if you can go through and do this exercise for your own company, the amount of clarity that you can create for people, often from like the CEO level all the way down to like IC product managers, like it can be a great thing for your career to be seen as like this person who, wow, really like illuminated the situation for everyone. Okay, so here's kind of like how we think about it in Vistaly, right? So we're like a pretty standard software as a service company. We kind of think about things in terms of like, so we have like our overall annual recurring revenue. And the inputs into that are like, how well are we able to like land new customers, basically, and how well are we retaining our existing customers. And so if you get tasked with something like, hey, we really want to work on churn, you need to think about like what are for your customers, like what are the inputs into churn. And the way we think about it is, okay, well, for us, churn is like a function of how well are our customers able to get the value out of Vistaly that we like say that we're for. Like these are the things that companies come to Vistaly to try and do. And if they're not able to do this, then of course they're going to churn, right? So we've kind of broken it down into these buckets. There's so many different ways that you can think about these things. You could kind of think about it in terms of like jobs, which is kind of what we have here. You can, depending on like your own company, you can think about this in terms of like segments. Maybe you're like a multi-product company. You can think about this in terms of like the contribution each product that you have is making. But this is kind of how we've set it up for now. And I actually want to call out just this idea that we were talking about earlier, how it's honestly, it's hard to do. Like we're a small company. I'm one of the co-founders, and we still even struggle with what is the best way for us to like think about and try and model the inputs into retention. And like specifically, how do we even measure it exactly, right? There's like some amount of, do we have like the product analytics muscle to even like have a good measure for this? Can we even think about what a good measure is? So I just want to like call out the fact that this is like really difficult. But yeah, the gist is, I would say like, I just kind of keep coming back to this idea of the like overarching theme is you want to take these big lagging goals or metrics and keep thinking about how can we break these down into smaller, more tangible things. So for us, we won't read through these, but we'll kind of like keep going into one of these. So like for us, a big one is teams will come to Vistaly because they want to like really understand the opportunity space. And so that means things like understanding their customers' problems through interviews, understanding their customers' problems through feedback that's coming in from like sales and support and success. And so we've like even taken this and broken it even further down into even like more leading, like points of value or like inputs into this, right? And so you can go through this exercise yourself and kind of think about for your own company, how do these bigger metrics ultimately like break down into like smaller, more tangible things. One thing I want to call out is kind of this idea that like often when you're creating a KPI tree like this, you'll have these like they tend to be like more business focused. It's like what's important to us as a company. And at some point you make this jump from, hey, what things are important to the company to what things are important to users or our customers that are the drivers of the things that are important to the company. And it kind of highlights this idea that like businesses are this, there's like this value exchange that has to happen for your business to grow. And so you kind of jump from, cool, we as a company like grow. We either like are acquiring new customers, we're retaining customers better because we're providing more value to customers in the ways that we say we're going to provide value to them. And so this is another like really interesting part of the exercise too, is this flip from, hey, like the business metrics only happen if we're able to like do better on these product metrics, if we're able to get more of our customers to more widely adopt the product, more frequently use the product, for there to be less friction as they're doing it, right? And so you kind of go from this sometimes like more like nebulous, like here's kind of like the jobs that we're doing for people, and you like kind of can keep breaking that down into, okay, well, what things would we see in the product that is like indicative that they're getting the value, if that makes sense. So then just to like tie everything back a little bit is, I think one of the coolest things about doing this exercise is you kind of get this model of like at the very top, it's like, great, here's revenue, or here's GMV, or whatever it is for your company, that topmost business metric. And if you can get things in a state where you've like kind of broken that all the way down into its inputs and constituent parts, you can then you can like look across that KPI tree and say, great, what's like our biggest area for improvement, like of all of these like kind of these like metrics, like which ones aren't doing the best. And you can start to like document like what are the customer problems, pain points, desires that we could address to improve this like given metric, right? So I feel like it's just like this great, it's this great exercise in, hey, we have this whole model of how the business grows, and we have like a whole set of things that we can do better for people to improve that. Yeah.
I think like just to give a tangible example, scroll back up, because I know we're down at the opportunity layer, but like scroll back up, go to like the 4 drivers that you have, or the 4 inputs into the retention thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if this is just going to be a tangible example. So like zoom in a little bit, so maybe it's easier to read for people. And let's just go like zoom in, and let's just go to the left and kind of move across. So this is quite a high level still, because we're like one level down from net revenue retention.
Yeah.
But we're basically, you could look at this layer as just an example, and you could go, well, we've got kind of 4 key drivers of what we believe being key drivers that input into, or key drivers that input into retention. And the first one being that teams are making progress on and communicating the impact of their product work. The second one being that they can understand the opportunity space. Third one being that they align on priorities. And then we have like basically engage, like a joy. Yes, joy was the word I was looking for. I remember the CES thing, the customer ease score. So then we got like joy. So then if you, when you have clear data against this, so you can see the CES score there, this is a good exercise. This is basically what Steve's saying. This is a great exercise to look at these 4 and go, well, which one of these are the lowest, right? Based on what we would consider to be a healthy level, right? So maybe 85 out of 100 from a CES score is good. Like, we're just happy if it's above 80 maybe. And then, for the other things, it's like, well, what's more in the red? And which one is the most in the red? And then maybe another question you can ask yourself too is like, if we want to increase retention, then which one of these do we believe we could make the most progress on? Because maybe trying to get CES from 85 to 90 is like, that's a small improvement, but because we're so close to the top, like diminishing value, right? Diminishing returns, I should say. Diminishing returns, like going from 10 to 80 is a lot easier than going from 80 to 90, if that makes sense, because you started the bar so low. So what you're trying to do is like prioritize here. And I think the one of the biggest values is, and this is why I think it's such an untapped opportunity in companies, is we're really asking ourselves, like, what's the highest leverage here, and where do we focus our time? And it's away from features and solutions. Like, before we even start talking about solutions and stuff, let's prioritize the problems to focus on.
Yes, yeah, 100%. There's definitely like an element of like diminishing returns, and so having these. I feel like the further along you kind of get in your company, you get a lot more clarity on, and a lot more like analytical like rigor on a lot of these. We're still, super early startup. So for us, like just bucketed under this is still just kind of these big overarching jobs. And we kind of internally have a sense for like how well are we doing each of these. and under these we have some metrics of like how well people are using the product. Yeah, but like the further along you get, you go from this, hey, we have this like theory on like what things are the drivers of retention, to you get just more analytical clarity on like specifically what usage of the product is like indicative of retention or like top line growth.
And also historical data, right? Like what's worked well and what doesn't. I just thought of a real tangible example from a client of mine. A coaching conversation the other day. The product manager was doing some of this work, and he said to me, he goes, we're so focused on conversion. He goes, historically, the best incremental increase we've done on conversion is 0.3%. So anytime they've chased after conversion with a solution, the best incremental benefit they got was 0.3% in conversion. Now they convert lots of people. It's a B2C product, so that's a decent number of people. But he's like, I was looking at retention the other day and churn, and like we have a well above average churn. Like it's quite high. Like it's a very leaky bucket. And he just was like, I just feel like we could have better success. Like that as a lever point would be better. Because if we're talking 0.2, 0.3% incremental improvements, if I can go from like, 27% churn down to 20% churn, like that's going to be tidal waves
Massive.
compared to any conversion increase we could do.
Yeah. Like I feel like that exercise works like all the way up the tree. It's even like more impactful the higher you go up the tree, right? Because it's like bigger picture, what's our strategy and focus, right? You're talking about going, okay, here's annual recurring revenue. Maybe like your top line growth is decent, but if your churn is terrible, like making that decision about where to focus up the tree is just like kind of like compounding your results. And then, but what's cool about that is like you can like do that recursively, right? It's like, cool, we know because we have data around it, like we can see that like churn is such a bigger problem for us than top line growth right now. And then you can kind of do that same problem, and it's like, okay, well, let's take churn and think about like what are the inputs into that, and figure out what is the biggest like opportunity for improving churn, and you can just kind of keep going down until you get to that. Great, this is like the right amount of scope for a single product team to focus on for a while.
Actually, just one last one. Expand it. Go down to the opportunity space that you had up before.
Yeah.
So obviously this is now going like multiple layers down. So we're kind of keep mapping, keep kind of going down. Then you can see you can start to add opportunities to it. And I really like this way of thinking as well, or visualizing, I should say, where like we're really linking those opportunities back to like key drivers and stuff. Like it's so easy to, we have opportunities that are coming up all the time, right? Like we notice something, or this is a great idea, we could do this, we could do that. But how do you link it in a way that it's not just some linear backlog that's like off hidden, and you can actually show the relationship between these two things? I think this is another really powerful thing of doing this. And then what you can ultimately do, which we kind of touched on before, is I think a super powerful thing out of all of this is then being able to like storytell, right? So you're talking about even like the next layer down, which is like solutions against this opportunity, and being like, okay, here's what we're if you do have any examples, we could get down to that. Cool. Yeah. So then like now we're down at like the solution level, and then you can be like if I just pick one that I can just, what's one right here? Like we just use this last one. So allow users to pick a portion of the transcript to use and create insights, right? So when you're talking to the rest of the organization and you're talking to them about like, why are we doing this thing? Why are we so focused on, being able to like pick a portion of a transcript and highlight it, or whatever that ends up looking like? You can tell this story all the way up. You can be like, well, we're focused on this one because like we're trying to, here we go. Yeah. So we're working on this because really it links to like this opportunity, and this opportunity is really important because it links to like these drivers, right? And then these drivers are really important because it's the biggest problem in our organization. Like that story I told before, right? Like, well, we should focus on retention because like we've only got an incremental 0.3% in conversion. So I think we should be focused on that. And what that does is it not only allows you to link the stuff that you're doing to like impact and everything, but I also think from like a business perspective and talking to stakeholders and stuff, you're actually kind of translating it into language they care about, right? Because like they don't care. Like we spend so much time with the product and with our customers and stuff, and we would love them to have huge amount of empathy with our customers and our users, but sometimes they're just not there yet, or they just don't. And if you're like, hey, I'm helping you drive more revenue or something like that, they're like, well, great, that's what I ultimately care about. Maybe you're in a company where they got bonuses and KPIs tied to that. Yes, those things aren't amazing as normal systems and behaviors and stuff, but if that's really what drives them, if you can link it to what they care about, then awesome. Like that's how you get them on board. That's how you get them to buy into your thing. It's like, well, we're trying to help you get your bonus by doing this. Right.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. I think there's some amount of like putting stuff in this format. It really just like helps you tell a better story, and really connect. I mean, that's kind of like the title of the webinar, right? It's like connecting the dots, right? I think generally there's this, I could pull it up in a sec, but like everyone, I think everyone at your company probably has this really like foggy mental model of how, hey, if we build this thing, blah, 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 we're going to make more money. And by really being explicit about your assumptions around how and why this thing is going to make more money, it helps you tell just like a much more coherent story. Yeah, and kind of goes back to those things we were talking about earlier. It's going to help you be seen as just like a more strategic, like thoughtful product leader.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on here as just a tip, haven't done this before, and it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on this, Steve, and what you found is those, like everyone, you said it before, Steve, which was great. Like everyone has this kind of mental model. Most people, I should say, most people in the company have this kind of mental model about how everything kind of links together. And what you're really trying to do is get that down on a page, and you're trying to get everyone to align on it. So when people think about like KPI trees, which is really what this is, or maybe this is an extension of a KPI tree, but people always think about like, or value driver trees. They always think about like the metrics. And what I liked about with Steve's example, and just as a general tip, don't obsess over the metrics. In actual fact, most of the times when I do, in fact, probably all the time, every time that I do this as a workshop with my clients, I just get them to put it in plain English. Like, what are your hypotheses? What are these assumptions? What do you believe to be true? Oh, it's going to be quicker. And I don't even care. Like, they just say quicker. And I'm like, cool, whatever. We can work out what quicker means, and we can dissect that later. But like, it's just about getting it down on the page, and don't obsess over it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much value into just like getting everything out and laying everything out in a way that's like visual. I think we're just naturally very visually oriented. And even if you're not putting numbers to everything, I think that's totally fine. But just getting everything out in this like, I don't know, this like visual model, so people can like see the relationships between these like either metrics or just like ideas, really helps people to understand what you're saying a lot better.
And probably another tip, like, because you can always do the metrics later. Hypotheses are a great start. The other one that Steve kind of mentioned before is, I found it also useful to chunk it down as like business product user. Not all the time, but sometimes it's a useful just chunk in, because inevitably you kind of, if you're starting at the top, and by the way, that's another probably tip, is you don't need to start at the top. Like you can start at the bottom and work your way up. You can start at the top. You can start at the middle. It's kind of okay. Just start where you feel comfortable and go in the direction that you feel comfortable. But if you chunk it as like 3 logical buckets where there's a bunch of business metrics that are more like higher level, more, and business metrics are just essentially things that kind of go across everything, not just the product. So like marketing influences it, sales, customer success influences it, et cetera, et cetera. If you have multiple products, all the products feed into business metrics. And then you'll get into product metrics where things will start to become very specific to a single product. So this is when we get into specific actions you expect users to take in the product. It could even be conversion and retention on that specific product, as opposed to like a total kind of retention type thing if you've got a multi-product environment. And then eventually you get lower and lower from there, and you start to get into like user outcomes. Basically, it's like, we expect users to do this. And on the tree that Steve had up before, you could kind of see that, because we had the business outcomes, which are kind of the three at the top, and then it turned into like product outcomes. Like, these are the behaviors that we expect to see inside the product that lead to retention, or we believe lead to retention. And then below, it got really into users. It was like three. Some of them were like, users did this 3 times or something like that, right? Like, that's like really user behavior. I'm expecting a user to do this X times. Yeah. And sometimes that just helps. Yeah.
Yep. I love that. And yeah. And I think it really just like highlights this idea of going back to like the value exchange thing. Like, ultimately, people are going to do these things. Like, if we see people do these things, it means they or their company are like getting this value from our product, which is like ultimately going to improve like our own, business results. But yeah, breaking it down into those like different parts is super helpful. Love that.
Obviously, there's a lot of Vistaly customers. You've obviously workshopped this a lot with different customers and different companies. What are some of the common challenges you see product leaders and companies kind of run into when they're trying to do this?
Yeah. Oh man. Let's see. We've already covered a handful. There's some just around like, a lot of, especially as you like go a little bit lower in the organization, but like, I'm always surprised to see how like few PMs or even designers, we get a lot of designers that like kind of come to Vistaly to try and run their like research. They just have no idea like what even like the business metrics up top even are. So yeah, pairing with someone a little more senior, or getting like feedback from the CEO or someone on after you do a rough draft, and just kind of like talking through those business metrics with them really helps develop that business acumen. I would say another big problem, you hit on this one earlier. We, a couple of years ago, or maybe even last year, when people would come to Vistaly, we would try and get their entire product org to adopt Vistaly all at once. And you had mentioned like, you don't have to start with like your topmost, business number. It's just too much to bite off. There's, moving from a more like output focused way of working to outcomes focused way of working. It's a lot of change management and kind of, cultural friction that comes with that, right? People are like often pretty set in their own way of working. So by like starting, I would say even just like starting locally with like your area of the product, and demo it at an all hands, or share it with like a peer product team, and like try and like slowly get everyone at the company thinking in this kind of way, is super helpful. If you try and do it all at once, it's often like too much headwinds to like make good progress on it. Let's see. Obviously, like getting down to a point where where you're able to like put good numbers to these things. Like, I do think at some point it's totally fine when you're starting out to like start with just like the idea, like these bigger ideas, or putting it in English. But I do think it's helpful to ultimately get to a point where you are putting specific numbers to things. It just makes it easier to like reason about, easier to track, easier to let's see, like define what success means, right? Like, you can start with, hey, it needs to be quicker, but at some point you need like a definition of like, what is quick enough, right? Or else you kind of get into, everyone's going to have their own idea about, is it fast enough or is it not? Or are enough people using this thing or are they not, right? So yeah, ultimately getting to more like trackable numbers is like, it's tough. It's tough because like you have to make a case that like, hey, this is like the right cadence for this thing to be successful, right? It's like you got to get alignment on that. But then also there's there's just like the product analytics muscle you have to build, and like getting your amplitude or metabase or whatever to be able to like accurately report on those things as well. So there is a lot that goes into it. Like I won't, I'm not trying to come here and say like, oh, it's so easy, just start using Vistaly and everything's going to be great. Like, even in our own tree, like we don't have like numbers to everything because we're not sure what like the right number to put to it is, and we're not even tracking it accurately enough. Even if we had the exact idea for how we want to track it. So it's tough, but it's something you iterate on over time. And there's almost, just like the value of just like getting all those assumptions out there is so high that it's a worthwhile exercise anyway.
Yeah, I think that my experience has always been, and maybe it's the like, I wouldn't say it's 80-20. I'd probably say like 60, maybe if I had to put it on it, 60% of the value is getting the thing mapped out, at least for your area. And that's mapped out without putting like hard numbers against it. Like that's just words and hypotheses and like assumptions mapped out as what we believe to be the drivers to each other's. You're going to get like 60 odd percent of the way just with that. And the reason for that is because now you can clearly articulate those assumptions and hypotheses. You can create alignment. You can tell a story. You can rationalize and defend why you're doing certain things. So like we're focused on this opportunity because it links to these outcomes, right? These business outcomes or whatnot, right? But then the rest of the value is then all the fine tuning, which is probably the which would take time and it's much harder. But if you can get there, it's huge because now we actually have, and this is like when you get into this position, I say with my clients, like when they get there, it's a huge unlock. Like not only are we having robust conversations about, do we focus on like it's back to that lever points, right? When you can map the space out, you're now, when it comes to strategy and stuff, you're having really robust conversations. It's not people's opinions and stuff. It's like, well, it's back to what I said before. Well, the best incremental improvement that we've had in conversion, like that client, right? Like is 0.3%. Like, are we just going to keep chasing 0.3% for like the next couple of years, or are we going to start looking elsewhere? Because I'm looking over here and churn seems high, and this isn't good. Like, I think we could go there. And again, you move away from opinion, you work towards data and that type of stuff, and then you can back it up too. Okay, we did these things. Did they achieve what we thought they would? Did they end up? And then you can work your way up the chain. Okay, did that have an impact on the next layer up? Yes or no? Okay, yes. Did it have an impact on the next layer up? Yes or no? And etc.
Yes. As much as it is like a top-down exercise of breaking things down, it's also like over time a bottoms-up exercise, because as you're really starting with these hypotheses of what are the drivers of growth. And over time, you'll learn, maybe this isn't as important, and this is a lot more important than we originally thought. And so, over time, the things down the tree tend to change as you just get more clarity. So yeah.
I want to jump into a question which was about mapping these to like lead in action hypotheses to test, internal teams, owners of KPIs. I just want to, I'll start. You can jump in after too, Steve. Like,
yeah,
I think the short answer is yes. I mean, we started getting down to that level. One of the things that was really nice that Steve had up before was when you start to map this out, exactly what you have here with the hypotheses, and Steve just mentioned to it, is like what's nice about actually going through this exercise is mapping out those assumptions and hypotheses, right? So like on some of those boxes, what Steve had was like, it was like a proxy measure for blah. So that's like the hypothesis. So the reason why we care about this thing is because we believe something, and that's just framed as a proxy metric, right? So this is a proxy for value, right? If customers are doing this, then we believe they're getting some core value out of the product. And absolutely, you can test that. Absolutely, you can also get very low level all the way down to like, here's a hypothesis on a solution against an opportunity, and you can test that. You can map it to teams. I think this is the powerful thing of this like doing these types of activity. And like Vistaly is a great tool for it, but like even if you have to use it, do it in like a Miro board or a whiteboard or something. The powerful thing is doing it. We just wanted to use like show you a real example. The powerful thing is doing it, and then, as Steve said, actually getting everybody on the same page about some of those drivers and stuff. And then you can assign owners too. You can be like, okay, well, you own this area and I own this area, and yeah, and then we both contribute to blah, right? Yeah, I don't know what you got to add.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love all that. Like, just the idea that, especially when you're early on, a lot of the, you don't know, like from like a mathematical standpoint, like what specific usage is, or like points of value are going to drive growth or retention. And so they really are hypotheses that you got to get kind of alignment on with the rest of the team. And that's totally fine. Yeah. And Vistaly supports being able to like, call these things out as hypotheses and like kind of run tests, and ultimately over time you'll do some experiments around, hey, if we do this better, if we do this thing better, is it going to increase the amount of people that are using this part of the product? Or if people use this part of the product more, is it actually going to increase retention? And that's fine. I think that's just like part of the job, right? Like part of being a PM is just like working with uncertainty. And yeah, like at the end of the day, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like business growth all the way at the top is such like a multi-factor thing, right? And so, and still, as a PM, it's your job to kind of have an opinion around like what are the things that contribute to that, and then help your team like experiment your way through, like validating through some of those hypotheses. So yeah.
I think you made me think it's also this is a good activity to build your business acumen too. So if you're trying to be more strategic, as we mentioned before, come across as more strategic, to be able to influence better in the organization, but even just to try and understand the business side more, this is a great activity because it's going to force you to try and understand that value exchange and how your product or your space fits into the broader picture and how everything links together. And if you can't map it out and you get stuck in places, it's probably a good place to start in terms of your own learning. So maybe if you're getting stuck somewhere, go start talking to people, try and connect the dots, try to understand how that bridges. Like, you might get to a point where you're like, okay, I understand how this product helps our customers, but I don't really understand how we make money off it, as an example. So then, cool, let's go try and work that out. And then you'll be able to link those things together. And it's going to help you understand the business better, build your business acumen. So I think it's great in that regards too.
Yes. I would say we've run these like KPI tree mapping sessions with people, and it's like night and day difference between when, if we're just running it with one like senior product manager versus, them bringing like maybe the CEO or like the head of product, maybe someone from marketing as well, like having a handful of people together and like running this session. There's often just like so many things going on around the business that maybe you're not aware of, or people just have different viewpoints about how things work. And so running this as a session with multiple people, I think is a great way to get to like a better, more useful model.
Peter had a question about connecting opportunity solution trees to the KPI tree. The answer is absolutely yes. I don't know if you wanted to show the thing again.
Yeah, I can. Here, let me present again. Yeah, I think honestly, it's one of like my favorite parts of Vistaly is it kind of like combines these two ideas of like creating clarity about what are our levers, and then taking that and going to, okay, great, now let's try and solve this. This is a different workspace. It's like a little bit more fleshed out. This is just like a demo workspace, but it really kind of highlights your question a little bit. So similar like top of the tree like structure, right? Annual recurring revenue, new revenue, retained revenue. There's like a demo company for like a meeting recorder bot. And so the idea for them is like, cool, conversion rate is a function of like how well customers are inviting a couple colleagues, linking their calendar, completing one of the generated like action items from like the meeting bot, right? And so you can in Vistaly, you can like look across these and say, oh, okay, cool. Of these like inputs into our conversion rate from like free trial to paying customer, like this one is like really not performing as well as some of the other inputs. So we want to create an outcome around this, which is basically a goal. Like ideally, it's like I don't know if you've read Jeff Gotthill's book around like who does what by how much, but I think it's one of the best ways to like structure your goals. But like, so you have this KPI and we have this outcome, which is our goal for like increasing this KPI by a certain amount over a certain amount of time. And then you can kind of take that and say, okay, cool. Given this goal, like what you have your opportunity solution tree under it, right? It's like, what are the problems that we might solve for users that are going to help us hit this outcome? And so, yeah, Vistaly supports like the entire like opportunity solution tree process. Yeah, when I talked about earlier, like, you know, at the end of the day, Vistaly is like kind of this mind mapping tool that's structured in a way that product teams would want it to be. Like one of the coolest things, we have these kind of like workflows in Vistaly for running discovery interviews with customers, and also like aggregating feedback from sales or support, success, or even if you're talking to customers. And you can actually tie bits of like tie these like learnings to the opportunities, which really helps to like at some point you're gonna like do some discovery and figure out what all the opportunities are. At some point you're gonna have to like kind of prioritize, okay, which one of these should we solve first? And having all of that like first party, hey, what are people actually saying about this problem right on the opportunity makes it a lot easier for you to like have an opinion about like how big of an opportunity is this really. So yeah, really all the things that go into an opportunity solution tree and all of like the different like data that you might want to collect about it, or even doing like if you do like some form of like rice, it kind of supports all of that natively. So yeah.
And I think one thing that I hope we've probably illustrated, I feel like I'm emphasizing it in several different ways in this time, but I think it's so important, is like this as a skill, and being able to do this is so powerful and so important. And back to like what Steve said before, I'm also amazed at how many product teams, and I say product teams generally because it's other roles, like you mentioned design and stuff before, but it's also, I give probably the other roles a bit more grace, but definitely from a product perspective, it's like, how do you not know how these things connect? But it does still amaze me at how, and even like I've talked to senior stakeholders and leaders and stuff inside businesses, and they can't even map it out either, right? And it's almost like, how do you know that you're focusing on the most important things? How do you know that the things that you're working on are the highest leverage? Are you like that client, just use that example again, that you're just like tunneled vision in on conversion, you're getting incremental 0.3% gains, and you're just totally missing some other opportunity or some other potential area that is totally untapped, that if you put half the energy into, you could get 10 times the results, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I go back and forth on this. Like having co-founded companies in the past, I think my brain is just, you know, pre-wired to think more in terms of like how do things ultimately like ladder up to revenue. But then there's another part of me that's like, well, when would people have like learned this skill? Because you're right, it is a skill that takes practice, and like, true. I feel like most product companies just don't work in this way at all. So when would they have learned it, right? Like most product managers are like, oh, I just own this area of the product, and I kind of talk to users and solve some problems around it. But yeah, this is like my domain. And so like why would they have been trained on that, or when would they have been exposed to that, right? It's not like we're getting degrees in product management where we learn these things, right? Like we're all kind of just figuring it out as we go along, and hopefully we go to webinars like these or read some books and kind of learn some of these skills. But yeah, I think there's still so much that people like you and others can do to just like really help get these ideas out there and help people kind of start to wrap their head around it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I approach it with that mentality too. I have a lot of patience and sympathy for him because it's like, no, just nobody showed him, and it is a skill. It's not easy. Probably last question because I'm looking at the time as well. Question about linking. Do you have any examples that you can share linking this to a roadmap?
Yeah, I can share this again. So Vistaly, these things in Vistaly actually can pivot into a roadmap, which is nice. Pav and I gotta Venmo you for giving me a bunch of opportunities to show off why Vistaly's so cool. So these yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's actually my co-founder under a pseudonym in there. So there's these like statuses on things in your in like the opportunity solution tree portion of it, right? And they have these like now, next, later statuses on it. This is just like another way that like Vistaly is. It's a mind mapping tool that's structured in a way that product teams would want. So all these things will actually pivot into and sorry, there's like some dummy data in here. It's just like a demo instance. But like all of this stuff pivots into a now, next, later roadmap. And there's, a handful of improvements coming up on this, being able to like kind of like swim lane this by outcome and a handful of other things that are going to make it really easy to kind of report on, hey, we made all these decisions in Vistaly. Now we want to kind of like take that and use it as a tool to talk to the rest of the team, or even just kind of use it internally in the product team to kind of like track progress on across these things. And one of the things that I think is really cool about it is it kind of like commingles solutions and opportunities. And so I think it's great as you're like working on stuff to like call it the solution it is. But as you think about like planning for things in the future, I think it's super helpful to talk about it in terms of like the problem you want to solve, just so that you don't get like too like pre-anchored to a solution for something that maybe you haven't done enough discovery on or enough like usability testing on or things like that. So you can kind of commingle opportunities and solutions in your opportunity solution tree, or in your roadmap, sorry.
For me, ultimately, like KPI trees and that type of tool is really to help you drive decision making. And it's for you to find those lever points, is what I always think about. Like, what is the highest leverage thing for us to do as a company? And you kind of going through all of these, trying to find them. And then the other thing that is useful for is also breaking it down to something specific that you can actually influence and you can own and you can control. Ultimately, that format is not a roadmap, and it can't be, because a roadmap now needs sequencing, and you're not worried about sequencing in that regard. You're more worried about decision making at that point in time. But then that's where you do the translation, and you're like, okay, well, if we're prioritizing these outcomes because that's what we think is the highest leverage thing, okay, what opportunities exist, how are we going to solve that, and then that can be turned into a roadmap ultimately.
Yes. Yeah. I think one of the things I love about Vistaly is it helps you take this like great way to frame your thinking, KPI trees and opportunity solution trees, and then like operationalize it into like the other things you have to do as a product manager, right? Turn it into a roadmap, turn it into like a report that you are, maybe you're like, doing like a one-on-one with your boss and like saying, oh, we do OKRs and here's my key result. Here's the things I'm working on. Visly because it's like structured, it has the ability to kind of like turn your opportunity solution tree and your KPI trees like into those things. So you're not trying to use, 20 different tools to kind of do all of that. So yeah.
Cool. We are over time. I appreciate everyone coming out, and hopefully that was valuable to you. I think this is such an underrated skill. It does take time to develop. I would encourage you to start to do it. I think being able to do this should, and I'm willing to kind of like, you can hold me to it. So you can hit me up if it doesn't do this, but doing this well would definitely change the way that you think and you approach product. And it should change the way that you can, how influential you are as well inside of an organization. And then huge shout out to you, Steve. I know it's super early in the morning for you. You had to do a crazy round trip and everything. But yeah, amazing. I appreciate you taking the time and taking us through this. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love talking about this stuff. So happy to get up early and chat about it. If anyone wants some help getting started with something like this, just hit me up on LinkedIn. Ant's super helpful with things like this as well. So yeah, hit us up and we'd be happy to run a session with you or just kind of talk you through some of the finer points of it.